And you know, like here's a lifter where where things might get complex. I mean, even just this guy standing. I mean, we just see this guy's barbell is this one's about to hit the rack soon, and this one's so far back, right? And I could say let's adjust the stand for this. Let's just do simple stuff, but nothing's going to stop this guy from falling forward on the left side massively. I mean, just look at this, right? Like, this guy's got such a massive right oblique orientation. I mean, it's infinitely worse than mine. But like when we talk about, this is when a case also gets super complex, right? Like, and this is why these models might make sense. Like, okay, we've got the left side, super extended far forward, right? We're going a bit off topic now, but this is when complex things do matter. But yeah, we'll go back on the topic. But yeah,
the thing is, when you look at that, I don't think it's complex, right? That's a classic like PRI, like right BC.
Oh yeah, I mean complex as in like the normal, I mean.
Yeah, but then the thing is, like, we actually have a lens to look at it, and it still happens that lens is like PRI, right? Like, so it's like, okay, does this matter? Probably not. Like, application wise, you do a few split squats, you probably coach a hip shift a little bit better. You get the this rib cage to turn back to the left, bob's your uncle, right? But it's like how would you know that?
Just squat more. That's
just squat more. It's like, okay, like
just keep squatting when the car is constantly turning off the lane.
Exactly,
it's like,
right? Yeah.
It's a simple example because, like, dude, your car, you want to drive straight. Oh, it turns out you literally, before you even start, the car is like, crashing into a ditch. That's literally, it's like, but it's okay if you just keep driving in a straight line, be all okay. Can't do that.
But anyway,
I think most people know like how to, yeah.
So I'm just gonna talk about my.
Is this the same guy? This is not the same guy last time, right?
Same guy, no.
The same guy.
Perfect. So this is someone that was gonna come on after his meet. So he did his meet. So we look at his meet stance, right? You can see the toes are pretty pointed out, and then you see that pelvis is like, okay. So you see that the hip shoot and made the lift, so on and so forth, which is fine, right? So one of the struggles that he's always had with squats is that because of the way he's built, like, obviously, just look at him, you wouldn't say that he's built to squat. At least I don't think so. His limbs are long, his torso short, right? Look at this was prior to coming on. Can you see how far wide the feet were kind of like turned out?
No, it looks like it's like 30 degrees or something.
Yeah. So this is when he first came on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can you get any legs, any glutes, any adductors? So he's like, nah, most of the time I just squat. So this is prior to that. So this one is this is a better angle.
That's pretty wide, huh? Yeah. And you can see it's just laterally rolling out super hard. I mean, you can just see like also his toe.
Yeah, but
it's like
right. So he's actually, like, I wouldn't say this is a bad squat by any chance. It's just it's hard, right? It's like 165 on the bar. He's a 83 kilo lifter. It shouldn't be that hard, right? So the question to him was always, can you feel your legs when you squat? So loads of that, but look at his that extension out, the whole, the hips kick back. The most important thing I want people to kind of take note of is, like, look at how that pelvis doesn't change shape, right? I know that's a very
just goes as one.
Yeah. So it just rolls and then it rolls again. So there isn't any sort of like nutation or counter nutation. There's a bit like tucking under, and then as he comes out, he has to look up, and you can see that kind of chest coming through kind of pattern. So obviously, and then if you look at the heel as well, so watch the heel here. Like that's that shift, right? So that the feet are trying to do this. So the feet are trying to pronate, right? So obviously he's not gonna miss on depth like that, right? So when working together, the first thing I had to change for him was the way that he kind of racked the bar, right? So remember we were speaking about how any sort of compensatory movement is a strategy to move center of mass.
Yeah.
So like look at the elbow cut doing this, right? So
Mhm.
as he comes down, right, he needs to pull that elbow under because he has too much weight backwards, right? Because he has to hinge his squat. So he has to kind of drop the elbows under, get that kind of almost, because if you do this, right, like if you do this, you essentially close off your front of your rib cage, right? So that's why people like that kind of elbow drive position, because it closes off the front of the rib cage. You try to get weight back, right? So he's already too far forward, right, to begin with, just because of the way that he's built.
Yeah.
Then as he comes out, because now he's like that, right, and he has to get back. He needs to kind of re-expand.
It's a reproduce force as
He has
well.
to
Yeah.
re-expand. He has to externally rotate. Otherwise, he's just gonna move very, very slowly, right? Because external rotation is this zone 2. So your zone 3 is where the speed is being expressed, right? So the first thing I had to change for him was actually that the shoulder, the kind of the way that he set up with the bar on his back. So I told him to first and foremost just take a little bit of a wider grip, so that as he goes there, he can still, you know, I mean, it still moves, unfortunately.
It's still moving, but it's relatively more controlled. You don't see it trying to dump him forward with the elbows as much.
So this is prior to the stance change as well. I just needed him to get used to that new racking position, and he has to. And the thing that I told him to do is he has to maintain a little bit of posterior expansion. He cannot be squeezing the scaps together, and it's super obvious, right? Every time you have this chicken wing position, right? That chicken wing position, it is a sign that you are trying to find internal rotation, right, at the shoulder, right? So you chicken wing out, and you cannot externally rotate, right? So first thing we have to change, get his shoulders, get his stance grip out, right? So that he can actually create this kind of turtle back effect. Obviously, it's not going to look like that, but then line up the elbows in terms of his torso, right? So this is I think a little bit more recent, where that position is a little bit better, right? So we fixed the constraint of the barbell, number 1, and then number 2 is we had to change his stance, right? Because that V stance that we talked about wasn't allowing his pelvis to create a kind of like a closure or a nutation at depth, right? So when you can't nutate at depth, especially in the low bar, right, it's where you need to hinge, and when you need to hinge, you need to have a nutation, right, regardless of whatever, right? You need a nutation, and you need a internal rotation of the kind of like, exactly. So you need that to happen at depth. Otherwise, you just plunge all the way to the bottom, right? Which is what he was doing. So I think he was, if we have a video here, I think he was struggling to hit depth a few sessions just because of the new constraint of this. Yeah.
So he's peeled in his feet just a bit by going wider. Yeah.
So what I've told him, instead of, so if you have a stance that's like that, right, close the stance like that, you might, you actually increase the moment arm, right? Because his legs are long. So now he has to move more things forward and more things back.
Yeah.
So you can do that if you think that that's the stance for you. You can do that which is you just basically tell him to lean, right? You just lean all the way down, because when you lean, you will flex the hip, and the hips will move back, because you can't change the knee, right? It's not like you can knee anymore. And I've asked him if he's used heels, and he's like, no, heels just push me more forward. And I'm like, okay, cool, right? So we know heels is definitely not the solution. So what we get him to do instead is just to widen out that stance, point that toes forward, and right now he's like, look, okay, look at the shirt, right? It's small, but there is that pop of the glute.
Yeah.
Right? There is that, you know, that like what do you call that?
It's that's like curvature and
Like,
the
like it's
yeah.
like so if you have a spine, so this is, you know, from Dr. Pat, it's like kyphotic T. So everything is this whole human system exists in curves, right? Nothing
Yeah.
is flat, right? So you have a kyphotic T spine, a lordotic lumbar spine, then a kyphotic sacrum, then a lordotic gluteal kind of like, you know, your glutes are kind of like round, like kyphotic, and then you have that kind of uh what do you call it, like lordotic area between the glute and the hamstring.
Yeah.
So the glute hand tie-in is like it curves in, and then the hamstrings curve out, and then you have the back of the knee which curves in again, and then you have a calf, and then you have a you know, your Achilles, and then you have that calcaneus, the heel, and then you have the inside arch, and then you have so it literally just curves like all the way around, right? So whenever I look at a lifter, I'm just trying to look at, are the things curving the way that it's meant to be curving, right?
Yeah.
So obviously he has a bar on his back, so there's no way he can, you know, keep a extremely like kyphotic upper back.
Kyphotic. Yeah.
But the thing that I need to know is he needs to close. He needs that nutation of the sacrum.
Mhm.
Cannot stay counter-nutated, because if he stays counter-nutated, it's finished past a certain weight, right? So now he has to maintain that, you know, it kind of loses it a little bit here. His depth is way shorter, but that is still legal depth.
Yeah.
Right. That's still going to be legal, right? And he can pause it. He can drive. You know, this is a real. The still have a little bit of that the heel coming in. Yeah. So which is not bad, right? It's still gonna happen slightly, just because, you know, you need that eversion to happen when you have your pronation. So not the end of the world, but that's the next thing that I want him to kind of that I'm gonna have him kind of you know, control a little bit better.
Yeah.
So do you have someone that you wanna kind of talk about?
Let me see. Yuki, do you have anybody else so far? I think I need to see my WhatsApp saves videos. WhatsApp is buggy.
We can talk about you, but that one,
Me? Perfect.
that one would be very very
Very long.
very complex. Yeah. So this is another one of my lifters. The main problem that he struggles with is big hip riser. So if we look at his comp lift, I think it's gonna be the most obvious.
Yeah, I can get my favorite. I can get Shabab out later, but you know, that's just an over exaggeration. Right. Let's see here.
So yeah. So he has that kind of high sticking point.
That's usually when
he's and yeah, go.
No, I say usually when we see that high sticking point, it's just because we see that their torso.
I didn't even know.
Like
how cooked I was at that meet. Okay.
But play the video again. Actually, yeah.
So it's not clear, but
yeah,
we'll have a look at it.
Let me get out this guy. So let me get this out. So we have.
So actually, a fit over here.
Yeah,
he has a big, like this big chest fall, right? Which we've been, which is absolutely a fucking limiter of the way he squats, right? Like, because his rep work, he'll just blast through. So I don't know why Instagram web doesn't load captions, but this is what, like 190 something. Like look. Okay, so when I see a squat like that, right? What like why is the man pulls like this guy pulls like don't tell me he has weak quads, okay?
Yeah.
This guy pulls like squats like 220, that was 220, pulls like 267 for a sumo opener. Man doesn't have weak quads. No way in hell, right?
Yeah.
Right. Look at that. That is not a sign of weak quads. That is like what, 270?
Yeah.
So I never understand the logic of weak quads, right? Like when you see a chest fall. Right. So now the question is, what is happening, right? What is happening? So from a theoretical kind of discussion standpoint, right? If we look at his squat, the thing that I started to notice is like he cannot maintain that knee forward angle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is happening is his foot is literally going, it's becoming so, first thing that happens, can you see how that
you can see it's abducting out a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly.
So he's trying to,
So I suspect that he is struggling to create that same level of counter nutation at the pelvis at depth, right?
Yeah.
Because what happens is, it's very simple, right? Look at the motion. He tries to bounce it out, right? So he's trying to forcefully look for some level of compression at the pelvic floor. That is not happening because we know that in order for that compression to happen, there must be a shape change of the pelvis, right? It needs to close off, right? It needs so that the guts don't continue to descend, correct? So now we have a gravitational problem. We have a hydraulics problem, right? Because you're filled with air and liquid, right? It's not a leverage problem, right? Because if it was a strength problem, he would not pull what he pulls, right? His quads are not weak, right? This is asinine, like stupid conclusion. If you saw that and just said quads, right? Dumb conclusion. Because I think that like if his quads are weak, he wouldn't pull what he pulls. So the solution is definitely not more leg extensions. He has leg extensions as a problem. The solution is, how can I get him to be in a position where he can kind of create that thing, right? So this is where I sometimes think that from a model's perspective, you might know the theory, but sometimes it breaks down, right? And the reason I say that is simply because I actually coached him to take this stance, to take a wide stance, right, and point the toes kind of forward. But I think what was happening was instead, because let's try to find, like, see, you used to lift in heels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she's still happening, You still have that.
Still dipping.
Yeah, still dipping, right? So again here. So look at what the, yeah, look, so this is 215 by 1, right?
Mm.
So again, look at the area around the glute, right? That the pelvis is like this. It's like a blooming flower, you know what I mean? It's not, right? And if you look at him, that stance is kind of like classic of what we spoke about. It's still a little bit V'd out, right? And then it comes off the heels a little bit. So I want to see if he has a front view. So again, V'd out, right? You can almost see he tries to cue that glute squeeze, which I told him not to. And then, yeah. So it's always going to be struggling because he can't hold that extension. And to me, it's like, okay, like the heels don't work. Helps him to capture depth, doesn't make him strong, right? So the solution actually was actually to point the toes forward, but narrow up the stance. So that was 215 for a single. Pop was 220 for a single, which is bad, right? Because this was like months out. Obviously there were lockdowns and so on and so forth. But still, so you can see the stance is wide. So I remember I talked about the square shape. So you can see that square shape over here, right?
With his elbows and his foot,
Yeah, his foot. But I think one of the things that I've failed to realize, and I think we need to kind of is that yes, he can probably constrain his hips, right? But I think his hips, right, the way that he's built, look at his sumo deadlift, right?
So easy.
Right. So I think his hips are set in a position where actually the wider he goes, the more space he can actually access. Right. So this is someone that I think when you talk about models, right, it actually doesn't work, right? Sometimes. So you need to find, okay, how can I then constrain the hip? Right. Because now his hips are going to always shoot back. So
Yeah.
I just told him, look, right, this is 195. Close in the stance a little bit. Give yourself some legs, right? So he is going to constrain himself by actually just narrowing up the stance and just bracing a little bit better, and then just pointing. So this is still a V out, and you can still see a little bit of that knees out position. But the thing that he's able to do a little bit better is like keep those knees forward. So this is 195 for 6, right? And like 195 for 6. I don't think it's super challenging for him. But this is how he used to score like 205 for 1. So we've gone through a lot of like
Yeah.
a lot of like changes to try to find what works for him, leaning a little bit more and things like that. So I think sometimes the model does kind of uh what you think works doesn't work practically. So
Yeah. I think, if you look at this guy, I think this goes back to what you said about the curvatures, right? So this guy is, if we're talking about the changes we're trying to make for this guy, if we just look at his elbows and also look at the rectus strategy, or the A to P compression we have here. So we can see, like, going back to the sticking point with the lifters now, is like you're going to see a sticking point right here, right? At that middle sticking point, he has always that slow pause, right? And I think this goes back to what you said, is like, this goes back to just managing the bar from falling backwards or forwards. And right here, there's always a sticking point. And the key limiter, I think, right, are those elbows, right? Because when the elbows, because his feet angle is actually looking okay, but if his elbows are constantly pulling back all the time, he's trying to dip forward, the elbows are trying to dip far too back, and he can get that bounce, right, too right. Because visually, looks okay. Obviously, it's not the best thing in the world. You can see a bit of flexion there already, but right here, once again, he's dipping forward because I think the elbows are so far backward to the point where he's almost going forward. And it goes by the point, okay, elbows going too far forward, obviously he's going to drive himself forward, like you said with Clinton. Also, when the elbows are, chicken wing too far back, it can also displace the weight forward as a result. So I think this is a pretty good example of someone where if we polish up his elbow position a bit, right, it could manage that sticking point just a little bit better, because it's completely fine until right there. Right?
But the thing with this is it's not a rib cage retraction.
No.
Right? It's 100% is not a rib cage retraction, because there's no if you were to, because the elbows being up is actually a scap in
he's just
actually
nothing.
Like upward rotation. I'm trying to climb over the top of your rib cage, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's not hyperextended, right?
Nope.
But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that he has got a rib cage that's retracted, because if he does, right, first of all, you wouldn't see that rectus strategy. Second of all, the elbows would be down, right? Because now the scap can like, what do you call that? Adduct a little bit better and protract a little bit better as well. So then, because his scaps can move out, right, his elbows can come down, right? Because if you think about elbows in this position, right, your scap needs to be able to kind of like move around for your elbow to kind of like, what would this be? Internal? Yeah. Like so that scap crawling up is a substitute for that IR position that the shoulder needs, right? So
Yeah.
so then and doesn't help that you have erectors, because when you have erectors, you're going to close down all of this. Again, no more IRs, no chance, right? So
Yeah.
so all of that thing is just kind of like layers upon layers of things that are happening.
Yeah, it's like if you look at his deadlift, rectus, right? Like, I mean, this is a much more visual example.
Yeah.
Right. He can't maintain extension here at all. Right.
Yeah.
Complete A to P compression. So, you know, like the way we coach through this guy is like, okay, this might be a case where we need to go and try and restore back a bit of movement options through accessories, right? Because, you know, you telling this guy to just do this more, do it, yeah, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I'm sure he could. I'm sure he wants to do it, right? Yeah. Like, I'm sure if I just, hey, Avery, can you just extend your spine a bit better at the bottom deadlift? Mate, I'm pretty sure we just told these to every single lifter. I mean, if it just worked like that, we won't have a job. It's like telling someone, hey, sit down and stand up.
I would either not have a job or be very rich.
It's like, hey, sit down and stand up. You'll be good.
Yeah.
You know, like, so this is one of those cases where it's like, why do these? What happens to the rib cage happens to the pelvis at the same time, right?
Yeah.
This guy is A to P compressed. If he does just as this, right? If you look at his back is probably wrinkled up to death because it's just compressed back and front.
Yeah. So anyway, with the deadlift, I think he could benefit from shifting the stance out, pointing the toes in. just because it will close, it will create that nutation better just from using the frontal plane. But anyways, the other person that I want to share is actually Gareth.
G-Dom.
Yeah. So Gareth is a very interesting case.
Where's his Instagram?
You need to go to his lifting one, which
the weak nutty thing, right?
Asians.
I don't see it on mine either. Did he delete himself? Hey, you got blocked by your own athlete.
For fuck's sake, he doesn't have.
Hey, actually, why is it missing? I can't find it mine. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what to do thing, man.
I think there might be an underscore somewhere.
No, it's not. It's not working on mine either. I just have it weak. It's not popping up on mine.
Jesus. I think Gareth's I'll edit this part. What am I doing? I think Gareth's Gareth's a very interesting case for me because he is a guy with a lot of muscle on him.
Yeah.
But he is like extremely lax. Right? Like all of my struggles with Gareth revolves around how can I get more compression into his joints.
Mm-hmm.
Oh damn, I deleted it. Phone was not playing ball with me. Let me see if I can find it. I don't think they would have deleted IG on my phone. But essentially what was happening with let me stop share screen. Gareth. So essentially what was happening with Gareth in terms of squatting was that he holds a very kind of Asians. Let me find it. I try to find this IG because he definitely, the one thing that I want people to look at is actually his yeah, there we go. The one thing I want people to look at is what is happening at his feet. All right. So.
Oh, it is there.
Yeah, it's just. I think there's an and in there. So let's have a look here. I think there's a squat. So I told Gareth to widen out the stance. So sometimes it doesn't need to be complicated, right? The man squats 500 pounds. I don't need a complicated change. Watch the feet.
Heels.
So as he pushes out, he does this. You can see the kind of feet rolling out on itself, right? I think it's a very recent change, but I just want people to understand how simple that change can be. right? How easy that change can be. So you can see that the feet are doing this like, so a lot of people rock back and forth. Gareth rocks in and out, right? Maybe here is a little bit better. Just watch the outside blade of the shoe. Rolls in, rolls out.
Yeah.
Rolls in, rolls out, right? So he's essentially trying to find, you know, the C word, compression, right? By flattening out the arches.
Mhm.
So rolls in, rolls out. Like you can literally see that rocking, right?
Yeah.
So what I told Gareth to do is, dude, just widen your stance out,
Yeah.
right? Because your body thinks the outside edge of your foot is the best place to apply force. So just make the outside edge of your foot the middle of your foot, right? So it's literally like, imagine this is his left leg, right? And this is his right leg. As he pushes, he goes like that, right? So this is like the floor, it pushes like that.
Yeah.
I just told him, bro, just do this for me. So as you, because you need to understand where the force is coming from, right? The force wants to go laterally then down, right? The body thinks that, okay, from an organizational perspective, I need to push outwards then down. So I just told him, why not you just widen that? Because physics is physics. The force only wants to go through that one path, right? Right, the path of least resistance, which happens to be the outside of his foot. So I just told him, why don't you just widen your stance, right? Because now that those forces are still going to go through the same spot, but what is going to happen is, because your stance is wide, you won't have that rocking anymore. Because what used to be the outside, right? So if the force was coming through here, you just need to shift it here. Now you're just going to push through that center, right? Because understand that the force is not coming from the feet. The force is the down force of the barbell, and all of Gareth's kind of like center of mass is pushing down into that area, right? So if you look at the way that he squats, he literally is like at attention, right? Like he's like a soldier at attention with his feet like that. And I'm like, no, right? And he kept getting like a lot of glute issues when he squat. And it's like, of course you would get glute issues, because now your pelvis, in order to squat like that, your pelvis needs to go so far back, right? And that glute needs to yield, right? And it doesn't have the ability to kind of like overcome from such an eccentric orientation, right? So again, just widen out the stance, right? So let's see if he has one where he just kind of like, let's look at this one. So you can see he is so floppy, right? Look at the elbows. Like, I think that's like 190 something.
Yeah.
197. He is just flopping everywhere. There's like,
he's just using, it's just like, it's almost like a bounce pad, you know, the way you see him just go, it's just moving as one unit. You know.
And the thing is, like, because he has muscle,
he can just tolerate it, right?
He just like, when he bounces out into from a like rubbish position, he uses the momentum to overcome the poor position, and then he uses his muscular reflex to catch that position and continue and finish the lift for him.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, yes, muscle is a good thing, but it
could be a better thing.
Tension is a better thing, right? Like overall global tension from how you set up, from the structural constraint of your skeleton, win. Right.
And I think this goes back to the point of like the starting position of where we put the lifter really matters. Like if you're put into the right starting position, you don't need to think. We don't need to cue anything. Doesn't matter what's a squat, doesn't matter what's a deadlift, doesn't matter what's a bench press. If you're in the wrong position for a deadlift, it's gonna feel shit. Because your hips are gonna rise, or you're gonna kick the barbell forward, or your armpits gonna the shoulders move back and forth. If you're not in the right position for the squat, you're going to feel center mass going off. You're going to feel, or maybe you're hinging too far back, hinging too far, or you're pushing too far forward.
Yeah.
We don't need to tell, you don't need to tell Gareth, hey Gareth, I want you to feel the inside of your foot a bit more as you go down. That doesn't make sense. Because if he's squatting 227.5 kilos, 500 pounds, how is he going to have the time to think through that when he's like trying to not, die and collapse in the squat? We achieve changes subconsciously through putting them into positions to drive whether we need expansion or whether we need compression, right?
Yeah. So this is his from his mock meet, 227. So this was his second attempt. He missed 235 of this. But you can see the level of like floppiness that's happening now. Boom. like
whoa. Whoa.
See that lateral the barbell?
Yeah.
And it's like also one of the reasons why I'm like just take a wider stance, right? Like you don't put a man has a huge upper body, right? But putting it on like I always tell Gareth,
10 centimeter 10, 10 centimeter,
I always tell Gareth, like, dude, like if people didn't know you, they would think you just skip leg day.
Yeah.
And it's like, funnily enough, like his squat and his bench, his squat and his deadlift are actually pretty good,
Pretty strong,
yeah. But then like look at that, man. It's just so yeah. That's me in terms of the examples that I wanted to bring up from a practical application standpoint. For yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
So should we talk about
accessories as well?
Okay, let's talk about we'll talk about accessories. I think we're running a bit long. So let's talk about accessories, or we'll talk about like you said, variations of squats, right? I think we both like besides competition squat. I think we like to keep it simple. I don't really like giving high bar squats, to be honest, because I don't really think it's too specific. Like if I wanted something to theoretically save the shoulders, I'll just give safety an SSB squat. But I think the best variations for us are, in my opinion, I think it's always going to be the pull squat and tempo squat, without a doubt. Because, like you said, if they're struggling to manage the center of mass, the only best way to teach them is punish them with a tempo variation, because they know if they're falling forward in a tempo variation, right? There's no way they can not know they're crashing forward and not feeling, the weight of the center of gravity going towards the toes in a tempo variation, right? And a pull squat is great because this goes back to the point where when we do see compensatory effects happen, where like I said, people driving the elbows forward, driving the elbows back, or whatnot, they can understand if I'm not producing force through the right means, pushing through the floor and keeping the center mass and not letting the chest dip forward or whatnot, then they're going to be punished more. So I think those are the two, the low-hanging fruit variations. And I think that's kind of the philosophy or a general breakdown of the philosophy of why they're probably the best. I think it's like we keep it relatively simple, and if we need to go more complex, we probably wouldn't go through a squat variation, but we'd probably just do it through maybe some split squats or leg extensions or some PRI-esque stuff. But other than that, I think for lifters, they need things that are accessible to their brain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So personally for me, yeah, I agree with that. I would try to get them. I will put them in specifics, as specific a position as possible. And then in terms of variation lifts, I use the high bar in a very compressive way. So so I actually use the high bar for people that need to drive a little bit more global extension. So like people like Will, for example, who start off very compressed rectus strategy. Actually, I find that the high bar has a little bit of merit when you try to get them to drive a little bit more of a, rib cage protraction, so a little bit of that chest up position. Just because in order for that bar to sit on their chest, they need to extend, right? It's obviously, this is the kicker, right? It's obviously not the only solution, and it's probably not even the best solution, because you don't fix an extension problem. People don't flex over. People don't flex over because they're flexed by more extension. You fix it, by giving them a properly retract the rib cage, right? But I just find that for some people, myself included, is that when you start to high bar them, they actually start to get a little bit more, and these are more. This is more common in your kind of narrows, like for myself, is that is actually you do get a little bit more tension through that posterior chain just because of that extension. So, but the trade-off is that they go forward. They just go forward, right?
Yeah.
They go forward for days. They can't hit depth. I posted my own training where I've done high bar where I've not hit depth. It's because I'm so far forward, right? But for me, I use it because if you want to layer on compensations, it's actually a very good exercise for that. But like I said, they need to be able to take that position, because it is layering compensations on top of on top of things. In terms of variation lifts, that would be the things I use. SSBs for sure, but even SSBs can be used poorly, right? So you've seen people hinge, say like SSBs all day, every day, pulling the handles down, driving the extension. For me, I think one of the things that people don't really consider as well, and this is something I picked up from like Kelly at Performotion, is that you can use heels, right? You can use heels in a way that actually disadvantages lifters, right? So say for example, if I reckon I could high bar squat a lot more in flats than I could in heels. But if you wanted to use it as a low limiting variation, like I have a lifter, very hingy squatter, so, or rather, requires a third squat day, but shoulders and elbows can't take it, so put him in SSB. His squat actually came up, his bench also benefited from that. So I actually think that for him, I was like, you know what, on this day, I really want you to squat your squats and not hinge it, right? Because he also pulls conventional. So then he would be like low bar, conventional, hinges SSB, low bar, conventional. So that's what, 5 hinges a week, right? So probably not very sustainable in the long term. So I was like, go and pick out your legacy lifters because they have the highest heel, and then go and squat, right? Like, because you will still be able to drive a high level of effort, but you just can't put a lot of weight on the bar, right? Another thing, again, picked up from Kelly as well, is squat with bumpers, right? Things like that. Self-limiting variations, right? Like, if you got some lifters who like psychologically cannot take a light day, it's like, okay, just make the environment really, really, really challenging for them. Like SSB with the shitty SSB bar that whips at like 140 kilos, and then use bumpers on that. Like, let's see how you manage on them. But again, these are like for lifters that already low bar very well, right? And they need a little bit more variability, but they still get a leg stimulus in that sense. So that's another one that I like. And obviously for you, belt squats, pin squats, things like that can be really helpful, because we need to create that IR, that pelvis, the pelvis needs to compress, right? And pass that range. So these are for the people that when they squat. So if you have any females, you see they just hit 90 and then they like this. It's like, pelvis pelvic floor not compressing, box squat, right? And then for me, pause squats as well. I use them very, very differently. So a 1 count is not the same as a 2 count. It's not the same as a 3 count. So for me, I use a 1 count to calibrate descent speed. I don't use it for like people like, oh, you pause so short. It's like so short. It's like, yeah, because I'm not actually trying to pause the damn lift. I'm trying to calibrate my descent speed so that when it starts to get heavy, I don't tempo it, right? So I use that 1 count for that. I use 2 or 3 count more for like concentric strength. So that's just a small distinction that I make between those kind of like 1 count, 2 count, 3 count, like shorter pauses and longer pauses. Yeah, and I don't really use much more outside of those things.
I think one thing is like, you know, when it comes to 2021, there's a lot of, when we talk about tier, and we talk about tier 2 accessories now, maybe not barbell related, there's a lot of split squats coming into the equation. There's a lot of campos coming into the equation. And, you know, I think this is when, you know, I may have made the mistake of giving too many split squats. Because actually, I think split squats are now not so good. Because
well, we're going down that area. I think I have the same reason as you why they're not good.
I don't mind doing split squats myself. I don't mind coaching split squats, but I don't like giving my athletes split squats outside of my supervision.
Yes.
Because they're shit at doing they're shit at doing them, because they, first of all, most people don't have 90 degrees of flexion, right? It's like if you're trying to do something to, you know, improve, you know, like, you know, the movement variability or whatever, it's like you got to give them a range. You got to do something within their range, right? So like, you know, if you're trying to justify doing a split squat because, oh, you know what, you're doing this to improve hip flexion, but you don't have 90 degrees of flexion, is pointless. Okay, so my athletes, most of them, you know, yeah, they have it fine, but I still don't like giving to them even if they do have it, because the big toe extension is probably one of the most commonly missing things that people will struggle to have. And you would just see them, their back foot's just going to be like laterally like rolling out like this, and then their pelvis is facing, you know, fucking Antarctica as a result, you know, like it's just going the opposite direction. So it's like
knees are pointing like to the east.
Yeah.
Pointing to the
like
west.
Okay, I can coach you it completely fine. It's gonna take 15 minutes of my life, and we only got an hour. Okay, shit, you know, like then you're gonna fuck it up when you're not under my supervision. So is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah,
campos are relatively easier to coach, but also once again they probably don't have 90 degrees of flexion. But if they do, then, you know, once again it's like you know, I still don't, I like campos to be honest, but you know, I don't think split squats are now my preferred choice.
Nope.
I like lateral lunges a lot better than split squats. Don't think they're particularly relevant to the squat conversation, but you know, I think lateral lunges are a better low-hanging fruit to improve. You know, if we're talking about a lifter needs more hip flexion or a lifter needs more internal rotation, lateral lunges, I think, are a better bang for buck exercise than Camparinis or split squats. 100%, because you only need 60 degrees, 45 degrees of hip flexion when you're doing a lateral lunge. But I think a thing that I really like, to be honest, is actually leg extension. Because if we're able to actually hold you at isometric at a certain angle, we can get that distal femur to ER very well and get that proximal tibia to internal rotate. And if we hold it at isometric, like boom, like we're gonna drive more change, right, at the tissue, right? Now, you know, is it gonna be like the magic fix? Like no, like nothing is gonna be the magic fix. Like all these things make small gradual changes to your structure, to your shape change, or whatever word we want to use, right, to drive more change locally, distally, or proximally, right? But I think for me now, Swiss squats are out of the equation. I don't ever write Swiss squats besides maybe 1 or 2 people who I think I've coached like a million times now. But it'll mainly be lateral lunges if I do have to have them, leg extensions, or it might just be something, you know, if we're trying to drive changes at the pelvis, like you said, we might want to drive it more compression or expansion or whatever. We might be doing chops instead to get more rotational elements. But I think this is once again getting into more of a far-fetched idea where, you know, these things are not going to be too important. They're just making that, you know, extra 2-3%. And to be honest, it is still important because we need to get you to be 100 more than 100%. We want to get you to 102, 103% output. So every percent does matter. But the low hanging fruit always is get the competition lift right. And if you can't do it, okay, then maybe we have to go through PRI stuff. Maybe we have to go through, like we've got to write the strategy. Maybe we need to go sideline. Maybe we need to do this. But I think accessories now for the squat itself, I'm not too thinking, like we gotta do this, we gotta do that. I think for the deadlift, I think it does make more of an effect, but maybe for the squats, I'm not so analytical in itself.
I think
the deadlifts, I think for sure.
I think split squats are actually
dangerous.
No, I don't think they're dangerous. I think they're not a good use of time, put it that way.
Yeah.
Because you would use split squat for two reasons, right? One, relative motion. Two, hypertrophy. Either way, hypertrophy shit, because hypertrophy, the best thing you could do, get them in a situation where they can mash, go leg press, go belt squat, go do any of those things.
Yeah, leg press would be my number one accessory.
Yeah. Number two, and it's like if they don't have a leg press, they don't have a belt squat, fine, you can do some BSS, right? Like a Bulgarian. You can do some front foot elevated, so blah, 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 so on and so forth. Why I don't like them for relative motion is because most people don't do it in a way that restores their relative motion, right? They turn the spine, they turn the entire pelvis, right? Like you said. So actually,
it's like they're not doing this, but they're just doing.
And this is the best thing, right? The best thing. You go to any commercial gym, look at, like, I don't even look at people in commercial gyms and like think, oh, that person's like pretty fit anymore. I just look like, yeah, that girl doing split squats, she is not lateralizing into her left hip. And it's like, that's just a sad reality, right? Like, I don't look at people as people anymore. I look at people as, biomechanics, right? But the point is, right, if I give a lifter split squats for restorative purposes, they have to do it in a way that's very specific, right? Contralateral load with a turn, so on. So you'll be coaching a million things, million and one things, right? And that's why I don't like it. Can people do it, and can they do it right? Absolutely. Can you coach it right? Absolutely. In an online space, do I give it to
online is just no.
Probably not, right? Probably not, right? Just like assess, is their relative motion the thing that's limiting them, right? And if it is, can we do any of the things that we've talked about in the last 2 hours before we go into thinking about, okay, like this person needs a front foot elevated split squat with 6 inches of elevation because we need the feet to come back 20 degrees into early stance, or should we do a step up with a contralateral load, blah blah blah, right? And it's let's make that stance adjustment first. Let's make sure you're not hyperextending first, and then we're going to address that as we need to, right? Again, like the lowest hanging fruit is going to be coaching the specific lift itself. And then, everything else is kind of on top of that, right? And then I think the last bit, we talked about the leg press for hypertrophy. I think that's a great one. Again, because you got a floor constraint, you got a platform, you can constrain your feet properly, you can get that hip flexion in the range that you need. You can bias it towards quads, you can bias it towards a more hip dominant leg press, but at the same time, you can also there's a lot of changes you can do with the leg press, and you can just load and mash, right? You don't have to think too much about it. The machine gives you that external stability. I think the other one that Ben might kind of disagree with is the belt squat. Is that I think it's a great exercise if you need to create, we have you doing it if you need to create unfortunately some level of compression above the level of the hip, right? So you have someone with a very flat lumbar spine. You can actually use that belt to pull them, like if they have a posteriorly rotated like pelvis with that kind of ER kind of like iliums, you can actually use the belt to pull them into that anterior. You can actually pull the spine into anterior orientation and then pull the pelvis in as well. But this is layering compensations on top of compensations. So I've given it to people and they have gotten like FAI as a result of that, because it just drives more of that like upper that compression above the level of the hip, and then just dumps them forward. Next thing you know, they're getting knee pain, hip pain, all that kind of stuff. Right. And then the other point about the belt squat is that you can use it as a kind of like something that helps you to counterbalance. So again, we've used it for you where we try to reach the arm forwards and then you try to retract the rib cage, right? You know, where possible, you can use it to teach that rib cage retraction and just kind of create a little bit more of a squat position. However, I do think that because the belt is pulling someone forward, you're still going to get that kind of like a little bit of an anterior tilt as a result of the spine being pulled forward by the belt. So all in all, I think I do like that, especially for incredibly strong people, because you need a little bit of force going through. And then the last accessory that I've recently been playing around a lot with a lot of people, especially your classic right BCs, left AICs, is actually a single leg. I think it's kind of like a Camperini, like deadlift, right? Because it will turn them back. So you know, you show the lifter with that left oblique orientation.
Yeah.
You're gonna turn them back. I think it's kind of similar to a Camperini, right? You turn their rib cage, then you recheck their shoulder measures, recheck their hip measures, and it's like suddenly it's not so imbalanced anymore. So that's one that's really good. And also for yourself, we've tried doing it with a trap bar as well to just create that twist. So it doesn't always have to be split squats to fix imbalances. You know,
Yeah, I mean, you can
turning,
use anything.
yeah.
Cable, high to low cable press into Bulgarian split squat, rear foot split squats. You can do a lot of things. You can do an arm bar.
At this point,
you can roll around on the floor, dude. I love making my clients roll around on the floor.
It's infinite at this point. Like if you know what you're doing.
So I just think, in conclusion, it's like when it comes to accessories, we know the lowest hanging fruit is coaching the main lift, but we can recognize the merits of adding in, you know, restorative movements, because we know that coaching you the main lift is going to get you 19% the way there, may even be 100%. But for some people who may be a bit more banged up, who may have a bit more compensatory strategies, we know that a two-pronged approach, where we look at things biomechanically through the compression expansion model, or seeing where there may be compensatory patterns happening, we know we can get you there faster if we coach you through the main lift for, you know, I don't know, where we have 100 minutes, we use 90 minutes doing that, or 80 minutes, but we spend 20 minutes going through biomechanics stuff, because a two-pronged approach where we tackle what happens at the rib cage and what happens at the pelvis, then giving you the feedback of, okay, you just need to sit up and stand, you know, sit down and stand up, then that's probably what we need to do. Because like I said, if someone's got a right oblique orientation, they're, you know, they're facing literally, you know, towards there already. Like if I coach you perfectly, you know, like, okay, get the stack, you know, feel your left COA, stuff like that, you're probably still going to be, you're probably still going to be facing this way unless we somehow get you turning back, right? Like, you know, everything is just always context dependent. But that's why we have different lenses to help us.
And that's why we've spoken about 2 hours on this, because like, it's like, how are we going to ever lay out like the infinite context in which it happens, right? And then people, the thing that really grinds my gears is like how people saying this shit is easy. It's like, yeah, it's easy, but like, you're probably, it's easy if you don't care, and it's easy if you think it doesn't matter, and it's easy if you just think there's like one fix for everything. Then yeah, of course it's easy, but I don't think that's the kind of service that we want to provide, and the service that we want to I don't think that's a service we want to provide. And again, that's very heavily biased on like where we come from, our educational backgrounds, the way we like to train. But it's like, at the end of the day, this stuff is not so that we can train less or with less effort. At the end of the day, it's like we want to find the right things to do because like you definitely are a lot more goal oriented than me, but I am still pretty like, outcome oriented as a person. It's like we don't want to waste people's time, right?
Yeah. And like, I think this goes with points like it may be easy-ish to understand the theory. It's really not really easy to understand the theory in the first place, but you could theoretically say, oh, I understand the theory, but there's a complete difference between understanding a theory and applying it.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference because you might see someone and say, oh, they got a right oblique. Okay, where do you go? Do you go ribcage first, pelvis first, or do you go foot first? Because people usually go proximal first to get distal changes of foot, blah, blah, blah. But hey, it turns out for someone like me maybe now, okay, you gotta go foot first.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just say, oh, blanket approach, hook line bridge, 45 degrees, boom, let's go, low reach. You can't just say like, hey, I've memorized the 7 exercises and I'm good to go. To go you from week 1 to week 7.
Yeah, it starts there, but you can start there, but
you start there, but you hit a limit, and then you might actually make them worse. It really could.
And it's like, yeah, you're like what? So I think at the end of the day, the point that we're trying to make about this model is not that it's not the
end of it. It's not the Holy Bible.
It's not special. It's just another thing. And I think that the reason why we talk about it is because we find that this thing has helped us to reduce the amount of hours we have to like troubleshoot, right? Like it saves you time. And it's like, yeah, maybe you were biased to it, but it's like it's everyone has a bias. Everyone has a preference.
If you don't have a bias,
if you don't have a bias, you're not
you have a principle, right? Like
yeah. If you don't have a bias, you're not very good at anything. Like
if you don't have a bias, I'm just gonna flip a coin every time I decide.
I am biased as fuck, and I'm not even gonna
yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I think we covered everything. I think we covered what goes for in a squat in terms of breath, toe off, and then we go internal rotation.
I actually have so much more to talk about, but we'll leave it here.
Yeah.